what's absolutely going to be make or break for most healthcare systems is how can you pivot what might be the majority of your operations, which are inpatient focused, to outpatient focused activities. And I think one of the unfair advantages that we have as a critical access hospital is the fact that we're capped at 25 inpatient beds. And it seems like for most, if I talk to most of my peers in the previous 2 decades, they would say, wow, that's a huge, huge handicap. But what it's forced us to do is what I think the rest of the industry is going to be forced to do over the next several years, is to look at, we cannot expand inpatient capacity. We are almost always at our daily capacity on the inpatient side. So we are forced to look at only outpatient expansion. And so we're looking at that in terms of, well, that might be where the industry needs to go anyway. So we're already focused on that portion of the business growing, and we're focused on service lines and those things growing in that space. What that gives us is where we think the organization will be in 10 years or 15 or 20 years anyway. So when the insurance carriers say, hey, this can be done in an outpatient setting, we're not reacting to that we're already there proactively. And so I think that's going to be a vital piece for healthcare systems to really look at. And sometimes that's difficult because you're depending on revenues and reimbursement that is better on the inpatient side than it is on the outpatient side. But to do that proactively, sometimes you have to look at doing it differently. And that is one of the weaknesses of our industry. We don't typically think outside the box very well. So that's going to be something that I think is a key strategy for a lot of organizations, is to think about how do we do it differently. I think if we think about it on a personal basis, we don't see what we don't see. When you look for, okay, how do I do what I do today differently? Sometimes I'm not the best person to ask that question. You know, if you asked my spouse, she would give you 100 different reasons and 100 different examples of what I could do differently. But for me, it's a little more difficult to find those things. How do I do what I do differently? So for institutions, I think it's the same. So in a lot of regards, we need to look outside of healthcare in some cases to figure out what are creative solutions. And when we look at technology, you know, we're a little bit behind in comparison to other industries leveraging technology. So how do we look for that and kind of push the boundaries in terms of, and sometimes it's uncomfortable, but we need to do it, look at other industries and other ways of doing things. So I think that's going to be make or break for a lot of systems in how we look at that.